Hi, I'm Beth, creator of Dry It, Can It. I like to share with you recipes I've created as well as tips about dehydrating food and canning food. Today I'm going to make a breakfast in a jar, specifically hash, sausage hash to be exact. So I made this recipe last week and I started with cooked sausage and then added my raw vegetables and canned it. And it was really tasty, but I wasn't happy with it because the fresh vegetables really cooked down and the jars that I used ended up with about a half a jar of product. So today I'm redoing the recipe, adjusting my seasonings a little bit, and I'm actually going to cook things down a little bit. So this is a very simple recipe. There's nothing that has to be specific in terms of the amount of ingredients or even what you want to use. But I'm starting with some cooked sausage. I'm using the Jimmy Dean original sausage because that's what my family likes. If you have a breakfast sausage that you like, by all means use that. I'm going to heat this back up, and to that I'm going to add some chopped Yukon Gold potatoes that I've had soaking in cold water. And what that does is it releases some of the starches. I've also got some chopped onion and some chopped green pepper in here, and I'm going to add that to the skillet. I would have liked to have added some fresh mushrooms, happen to be out of those, but I do have some dehydrated mushrooms, and so I'm going to add those. And then lastly, I'm going to add my seasonings, and today I'm going to use salt, pepper, garlic powder, and some fresh thyme. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of this combined. I'm going to cook it until the potatoes are soft, but really not quite cooked all the way through. And then I'm going to can it, and I'll be back to show you how I do that. My pressure canner is currently heating, my jars are in there heating, and I will be back to show you when I'm ready to put this together. All right, I've combined all my ingredients, the sausage, potatoes, peppers, and onions. I have also added the dehydrated mushrooms. And once this cooks down a little bit, then I'll add my seasoning. All right, my potatoes, sausage, peppers, and onions are cooked along with the spices. I think you want to cook these until your onions are translucent. I find that way that my potatoes were soft, but not all the way cooked. I have heated my jars, following my canner directions, and what I'm going to do now is fill those. Now I expect to get about 4 to 5 pints with this. And I'm simply going to take this mixture and I'm going to fill it to the 1-inch line on the jar. And I'm not going to, push the packet too tightly, but I definitely want to stamp it down. So I think that's good. Put a little bit more in there, like so. These funnels definitely help, but yet I still find myself making a mess oftentimes. So there we go. So the 1-inch line is typically going to be that first ridge on your jar. So when these are all filled, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these in my pressure canner, and then I'm going to can them for 75 minutes. If I were using quarts, I would want to have that for 90 minutes, and that's because I'm working with meat. So even though my meat is fully cooked and my vegetables are mostly cooked, they will continue to cook the vegetables, that is, when they're in the pressure canner. Now, I'm not going to be adding any kind of a liquid to this. The vegetables will produce some more liquid as they're cooking. As I finish all of the jars, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a clean rag and I'm going to dip it in a little bit of vinegar, and then I'm going to wipe the rim of each jar. And you want to do this to make sure that you have clean tops on your jars. You're working with sausage that's grease, anything like that, that might keep your lid from getting a good seal is not something that you want to do. Then I'm simply going to take my lids and center them on the jar, put my bands on until they're just a little bit past resistance, like so. Now, today's lids, for the most part, do not have to be heated prior to using them for canning. Do check your box directions. The new lids have a different compound on them. I forgot to wipe that one off. No, I wiped that one off. Today's lids have a different compound on them, but you might still have some lids in your home that require heating, so be sure to check the back of your box. So I'm going to go ahead and finish canning. Whoop, that jar's hot. I'm going to finish filling the rest of these jars. I'm going to put those in my pressure canner for 75 minutes, and when that's done, I'll be back. This recipe made 5 and about 3/4 jars. This jar is not quite full, not quite to the headspace I would want, but this is the jar that I'll use to open up tomorrow to taste this. One little trick, after you're done with your vinegar and you've got a little bit left, just go ahead and dump that into your water, either before or after you put your jars. Adding a little vinegar to the water in your canner will keep the hard water deposits off of your jars. So into the canner these go for 75 minutes. The hash just finished in the pressure canner, so I'm in the process of taking the jars out. I think you can see that it worked much better cooking it and then filling the jars because they stayed fairly full. So I'll be removing these. I'll let them rest for 12 to 24 hours. I'll check the seals to make sure they're good, and I'll be back in the morning to show you what we have. The breakfast hash has been pressure canned. It was pressure canned for 75 minutes since it has meat in it, and it rested overnight. And I've removed the screw caps and I've checked each lid. Now remember to check your lids with pressure canning. You just want to push on them and they should have no give. And of course, when your bands are removed, your lid should be tight. So everything looks really good. It looks like it pressure canned just fine. The recipe gave me 5, and I'm going to say a half pints. I'm actually going to open up the half pint today simply because there's not a lot of headspace on that and it makes sense to do that. So again, what I do when I am opening my lids that I have for canning, I use some kind of a tool that doesn't put a bend on them because I'm able to use these for sealing my dehydrated food. So it's a great way to reuse the lids. Some people do use these, reuse them for pressure canning. I don't recommend that, but again, you need to do what works for you. So everything looks good, smells amazing, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on a plate and I'm going to heat it up. Now, putting this in the microwave in your jar is not recommended simply because the jars are meant for pressure canning and microwaving supposedly can weaken the jars. I have put things in the microwave with the jars and I'm sure I'll do it again over time, but it's a practice that you might want to avoid. So I'm going to heat this up and I'll be right back. I've taken the sausage hash and I have microwaved it now. There is some juice at the bottom of it, so I can't really tip this, but you can smell the spices and the herbs and the pepper and the potato. And this is really good. Even though this is sort of what I'm calling a breakfast in a jar, this is substantial enough that you could have it for any meal. You could have it for lunch, you could have it for dinner. You certainly could pressure can this in quarts if you do it to 90 minutes. I mentioned earlier that I take my lids and I reuse them for sealing my dehydrated food. And what I do as soon as I take it off is I put a little X on it with a Sharpie, a black permanent marker, because to me that little X tells me that this has been used for pressure canning and just use it for dehydrating. So that's a little trick I use to identify my lids, which when you're washing them sometimes will get mixed up. So anyway, I hope you found this video helpful. Would appreciate a thumbs up. Hope you subscribe to the channel. I've got lots more coming in the months to come. And thank you for watching. Happy canning.